And I think I saw some people joining in.
Yeah.
Welcome. And if you're new here, feel free to introduce yourself. And also, I know not everyone always wants to like turn on their mic or camera if you're just here listening in, but it's always cool to say at least hello in the chat and maybe put where you're watching from or tuning in from. Also, if you want to share anything else about what you're working on, that's always interesting, especially if it's around MLOps or if you're building something with Flyte. That's always really cool to hear about. So while we're waiting, we're going to wait like for minutes or so before we get on with the presentations while people are kind of joining in. And as people join in, feel free to say hello. So welcome, everyone. Get more people joining in. And we have some really cool speakers today. I'm sorry, David.
Yeah, I mean, in the meantime, before we go with the presentations, sure, really cool. Yeah, a couple of things we wanted to share. Again, if this is your first time, welcome. I'm sharing here again the link to the agenda. You can add yourself to attend this list. Totally optional, but it's kind of cool to know who was here, especially for folks who didn't attend. And in terms of community project updates, well, first thing, there's a new blog from a community member. This time is Wallapop. Probably I should share my screen real quick, right? Just in case you're not.
I'll share the
looking at
link in the
actual.
chat too, directly to the blog, if you want to check it out.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. It's also on the agenda doc. And yeah, probably if you remember or if you want, Wallapop, they presented at this very meeting in February. And after the meeting, we were together on a blog post because yeah, probably writing has it's more durable. And they added a bunch of details. It's a very transparent kind of blog post and their journey and how they use ML in general at Wallapop. For context, if you're in Spain, because some of you are, probably you know Wallapop is.
Yeah, I know them. They're
Yeah,
based in Barcelona.
cool. So yeah, they use Flyte, and it's the largest second-hand marketplace in Spain, and they also operate in Italy, Portugal. And the whole history of how they use ML, what they were trying to do in terms of platform, how they were using SageMaker, and why they picked Flyte, all the struggles, how they're now deploying and using Flyte, even how they design the project structure to better serve the data science team. And so definitely recommend it if you want to work on something like this. And we are trying to work collectively as a community on documenting these journeys in written forms. Just reach out to us. We can help you get rid of the blank screen, which is always daunting to get started writing something. All right, next one is changes to office hours. We used to have a link available for folks to schedule a call with maintainers for direct support. The thing is that was not being very used at all. I mean, most of the times folks get their questions answered via Slack or GitHub issues, etc. So not pretty much used, but it caused a lot of context switching for maintainers. So now that we are approaching a stage in the project where we want to focus on quality, stability, improving the project, probably we need to change the structure. So we don't have we won't be hosting office hours anymore, at least in the short. I mean, we eventually have calls where we support directly users with specific problems, but let's use it as only if it's needed, not as the first option. And if you really require a custom use case, very specific use case where you need direct support, still reach out and probably we can find resources at Union AI who can help you directly with this, right? Cool. Okay, and finally, a new release, last but not least, 1.12 is out. It was released yesterday, and also Flyte 1.12 was released. You can find the link there in the agenda. The summary is a number of improvements in terms of accuracy on different sections of the system, both in the Helm charts, in Propeller, which is the execution engine, more flexible ingress configuration, which means that, for example, for the Flyte binary Helm chart, you can now choose if you want all the both gRPC and HTTP routes in a single ingress resource or separate resources. This is helpful for specific controllers like traffic that only support a single resource. And there are a number of updates in additional or new sections in the documentation, right? And last but not least, there's a new AI-powered assistant. We will have a presentation on this later during this call, so we'll leave the details till then. But that's it in terms of community project updates. I don't know if there's any comment, question. And again, if you're just joining, welcome.
Yeah, I think definitely a lot of people joined in while we were talking about that. So again, if anyone wants to say hello, you're welcome to introduce yourself in the chat and maybe put in like where you're watching from. That's always kind of fun to see. And if you're working on something interesting, feel free to share it in the chat as well. And with that, I think we're ready for our first talk, right, David?
Right. So let's welcome Mariano and Nandakumar from Sender, fast forwarding MLOps at Sender. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Sage. Thank you, everyone, for sharing today. So Nandakumar, is it fine if I share the screen?
Sure. Yeah. Go for it.
Let's go. So give me a thumbs up if you see the screen. Yeah, thanks. So welcome, everyone. Today you have the pleasure or displeasure, I don't know, of listening to me and Nandakumar. Myself, I am Mariano Semmelman. I work at Sennder already for a year and something, a year and a few months as a staff machine learning engineer. I'm based in Barcelona, and I have around, let's say, 10 years of industrial experience in ML, okay? Maybe now to Nandakumar.
Yep. Hello, everyone. I'm Nanda Kumar. I'm working as a senior machine learning engineer with Sennder. Joined Sennder about a year ago. I have about 13 years of experience working on big data and machine learning problems. Yeah, I'm based in Madrid. Before this, I was in the US. Yeah, so nice to be here.
So today, first, a little bit about Sennder, the context, okay? So you have an idea more or less what we do at Sennder and why we need to use Flyte. Sennder is a road freight forwarder. That means that shippers or clients come to us that they want to, when they want to send a cargo from location A to location B, okay? Let's say I'm Coca-Cola and I want to send bottles from Munich to Hamburg, okay? So then from our side, through different sources, okay, we connect different carriers around Europe, okay, in order to find the most suitable carrier, okay, in terms of price and characteristics for that cargo for that client, okay? We are in a leading position from technically from the tech companies that do this. We are ahead, okay, in many ways. We provide value by saving money to the shippers, right? While also increasing earnings for the carriers, okay? That in comparison to traditional road freight forwarders, okay? We also put a lot of emphasis in reducing carbon emissions, and we're doing a great deal of impact there. using state-of-the-art technology and our connected fleet. So we think we are taking this to a new level, okay, in terms of transparency and flexibility. In terms of numbers, carriers, we in terms of carrier perspective, for them it's good to come to us because we operate around 50,000 monthly loads, cargos, right, that need to be moved. And we operate around 20 plus markets all across Europe, okay? So that means that it opens the door for them to work with a lot of clients, okay, and be always busy. And from the shipper side, they come to us because they find they connect to a large pool of possible carriers, right? Which they all compete to get the best price for that cargo, right? There is an auction behind scenes. I will mention that in a bit. And 250,000 vehicles is the pool they can access to. That means that if you're a small business doing that needs logistics, that needs to scale, we are a good place to come because you can quickly scale up, okay? A little bit about the team we work at. Nanda Kumar and me, we work at a team called Sennai. It's the machine learning and AI tools that works at Sennder, that mainly has right now handles the responsibility of 2 products that we will cover in a moment. One of them is the recommendations, okay? Before explaining that, when I want to explain this product, this is a product that our carriers see when they come to our marketplace, okay? They open the marketplace, they will find all the possible loads, right? And we have thousands at any given point in time. So for a carrier that is on the road, right, trying to doing their next cargo, right, we need to find a way to show them the most relevant loads, right, at this point. And that's what one of the teams does is a recommendation system application, okay, that suggests the most suitable loads for each carrier, right? On the other side, and you can see it already here, right, that on the payment per load, right, that carriers can or submit a bid and go through an auction process, or get with the accept now button, right, immediately capture that load and get it for themselves, okay, and they don't have to compete with the rest of the carriers in order to do it. For that, there is for that product, this is a data product that the pricing team at our company maintains, which they calculate the expected cost, that meaning that how much we expect a carrier to charge us, right? And based on that, suggest a very good price that is very good for the carrier and very good for the shipper, and that it avoids the carrier to have to go through the auction process that is time consuming. Good. So this is more or less the current teams. We are still growing. You can find we're hiring, by the way. You can come to our site if you want, but we are growing. We are getting into new areas, but these are the main applications we have right now. So having said that, maybe now Nanda Kumar can explain a little bit of how Sennder looked like in terms of workloads before, okay, before Flyte. So Nanda Kumar, yours is yours.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So this is what we had before Flyte. So this is like prehistoric GitLab schedules, right? So here you can see we had GitLab schedules to run model training. We had one for rolling statistics update. We had one for bulk inference. So it's like very rudimentary. But it looks pretty straightforward when we look at this and think, oh, it must be very easy to do this. And why do we need something else, right? But there were some pain points, and that's why we were forced to start thinking about how we can improve this whole orchestration process, right? Next slide, please. So yeah, so the main challenges or pain points with GitLab schedules were like scheduling limitations, right? So ideally, we'd like to have a real time, pricing. Like Mariano said, recommendations is like very, it has to be real time, right? But GitLab has a limitation that we cannot run a job at a schedule of less than 6 minutes. So that's a no-go for us. We can't go below 6 minutes. So we are trying to get to a real-time place, but it needs like a lot of architecture changes. So that's going to take time. So at the moment, we have batch. So second thing is resource management. So no granular control on resource utilization with GitLab runners, right? We had fixed like small, medium, large kind of machines, and that's the only thing we could use, right? So if you want to run one pod, it'll get one machine kind of thing, right? That led to CI/CD overload. So basically, GitLab is for CI/CD, right? So for build and deployment, it's not meant to run machine learning workloads. And typically, machine learning workloads could run for 1 or 2 hours, or depending upon the data and size and everything. So that ended up overloading our CI/CD and led to blocking other CI/CD jobs. And the last point is scalability, right? So if we want to do distributed training, like if we want to train with more data, or if we want to train multiple models at the same time, or we want to do like hyperparameter tuning with say 50 folds, for example, right? We couldn't do it. So that was kind of a limitation for us. Next slide, please. So that's what led us to start thinking about something new, and we need some sort of orchestration here that provides us gets us away from all these pitfalls. So we followed something called Moscow feature prioritization, which says what are the must-haves, what are the should-haves, could-haves, and what we don't really need, right? So some of the must-haves where we need to be able to run multiple workflows for multiple teams, right? So like Mariano said, we already have 2 teams. We are adding more teams, so that's critical for us. We need reproducibility across environments. So we need the workflows to run exactly the same way as it does in dev, staging, and prod, right? We need strong environment dependency isolation, meaning every workflow should be able to have its own dependencies so that we don't have one bloated Docker container, right? So we can have like Docker containers for separate use cases. We should be able to specify compute resources. This is important because, if a task doesn't require a lot of memory, CPU, we can specify that, and Kubernetes is good at scheduling that, right? So it goes to cost optimization, resource optimization, and so on. We needed pipeline versioning. That is important for experimentation, to track back our experiments results and correlate and things like that. So that's why pipeline versioning is important. It should be able to run on any cloud platform. So we are AWS native, but still we wanted that flexibility that it's able to run on different cloud platforms. And robust credentials management system. Obviously, we want to limit the access of the system to a limited set of people. Next slide, please. So how we did this evaluation, right? So first we came up with the Moscow criteria. Moscow criteria, must have, should have, has attached weights, and there is a bunch of other orchestrators we tried, including Airflow, Metaflow, Kubeflow, but it came down to the 3 main contenders were Flyte, Metaflow, and Kubeflow. So Kubeflow did not have very robust data flow management. I think Flyte does it really well. It manages internally the data flow between tasks. And Metaflow did not have a really good, rich set of plugin ecosystem like Flyte has with Ray and Snowflake. and all Databricks and all kinds of plugins, right? So that's where Flyte kind of shined in our analysis. So just in case you want to read more about our methodology, about how we went through this process of identifying the best orchestrator for our use case, you can search for Sennder MLOps primer, and we have a blog post explaining how we did this whole process. Next slide, please. Deployment and challenges. So all good. We found an orchestrator that we like, which supposedly has all the features that we want, right? So how do we go about deploying this, right? So we went through the documentation. Mariano, next slide, please. Yeah, so we looked at the documentation for a recommendation, and we found that Flyte binary was recommended for a single cluster use case, so we went with that. A quick shout out to David Espeo's Flyte the Hard Way blog, which was really helpful in helping us figure out how to deploy Flyte into production. So shout out there. So if you're looking to put this into production, definitely recommend taking a look at it. And there were some challenges there as well. So it was not all rainbows and unicorns. Initially, we had some challenges, but just to preface, most of these things have been fixed now in the latest versions of Flyte. So nothing to worry about. This was like about a year ago when we were looking to deploy, right? So first thing was pod labeling. So our infrastructure team has like very strict requirements about requiring certain labels for deployment tracking, incident management, things like that, right? And without that, it won't let us run any pods on Kubernetes. So what we faced was, we weren't able to pass like common labels from values.yaml, and it should be applied to all pods, right? So it was not there at the time. I guess it's there now. Another challenge we faced was we needed TLS for gRPC, which we were not able to configure from values.yaml again. So we had to make some changes on the Flyte Helm chart to allow for this. The third one was Prometheus metrics. So we wanted obviously to track the health of the deployment, but the metrics port was not exposed by default. So we had to again go into the chart and make some changes to make that happen. And finally, task pod annotations. So we needed to have some Datadog annotations. We use Datadog for monitoring. So we need to add some Datadog annotations so we can track the logs and metrics from worker pods, like the task pods. So there was no easy way to do this. We do have a workaround now to pass this through the launch plan, so it's fine. But like having something where we can directly do it in values.yaml was not available at the time. Next slide, please. Yes, so, okay, so till here, we were at the deployment stage, all good, we got it working. Now, Mariano will talk about, how it's helping us today with our ML workflows.
Thank you, Kumar. So after all that process, we got it in place, and it was really fast for us to not just to have what we have before, right, in terms of functionality, but we quickly started having even more. Okay, it really allowed us to bootstrap and gain traction. And today I wanted to highlight some of the functionalities we use the most and the ones we like the most, okay, from Flyte on our side, because they are a little bit a differentiator to other orchestrators, okay? So places that we use it, this will sound it's very typical for a machine learning pipeline, okay? So everything on ETL, data preparation, we use it a lot, okay? one of the key advantages is the reusability of tasks. Okay, we can reuse tasks easily across different workflows. Okay, and allows us to maintain less code in a way. Okay, and but still seeing modularly, so you don't have everything blocked into a single task. Okay. We also use it for hyperparameter tuning with map task. I will show that in a moment. Okay. For model evaluation, we use it not just to evaluate the current model, also to do cross comparisons, okay, between models. So we can launch, let's say, a head-to-head comparison of different models. So this is quite nice. And also in one of the cases, in one of the applications, we use it for inference as well, because the use case allows for it. However, that team is planning to move away from batch into real time, but still it's a solid solution for batch inference. And all of this on top of the domains as isolated environments. I think that's a great idea, having domains, because it allows you to have per deployment separate domains and isolate per deployment, right? So we have projects per team, and each team has a different domains. That makes things very, very, very convenient. Now maybe some real life examples. I'm not going to jump into the details today of what exactly we are running, but maybe for you to have an idea how a regular workflow looks for us. Okay, so this is the inference pipeline you see at the top, for example, or a model evaluation for the other team, right? How they're doing. So they separate the different stages, right, in terms of tasks. And you probably know, for the ones who already use Flyte by now, they know that, well, if you depend on the variables of that task, you know, you automatically get connected. And this allows for parallelization also, like if things can run in parallel, they will run in parallel. We also, in some cases, we connect to weight and biases. We track things into weight and biases for model tracking and experiment tracking. Now, highlighting what we like about Flyte, okay? The things we love about Flyte. First, it's Python native. I cannot tell you how much this helps, okay? It means that there is no context switch on the mind of the people working with it, okay? It's just more Python code. The skills of the teams are already in Python, so that helps a lot. It's easier to test also that you can run it. You can run the task right from your local, you know, maybe not to say names, but Airflow, right? Things are like a little bit harder to test in comparison. And versioning, I think it's one of the killer features. Okay, I think it's something that this concept of, okay, my workflow, I have a version, I have a launch plan, right, schedule that has a version associated with it, and then I need to test another workflow, right, and I don't need to change that schedule in order to test it, right, and I can test it on the side, or I can roll back, right, easily. At the beginning, it gave us a bit of a headache because it's a different mind model, right, on how to operate with the versions and handling that. That you can, for example, learning that you cannot delete versions, you can only archive them, right? That never comes straightforward until you try every possible way. I don't know, it's only archive, right? But then in the long term, right, I think it plays well. The other part is the scaling, right? So given that it's native, right, it's quite straightforward to scale it. You just, if your cluster allows you ask for those resources and you get it. Additionally, for example, in this case, you can see how we use the map task functionality, okay, where it allows you to launch many times the same task, okay. We use it for hyperparameter tuning, right? A simple hyperparameter tuning with faults. It gave us parallelization, right, for cheap, for free, right, without a lot of effort. Maybe if it's worth noting, not all the labels, not all the annotations get to, when you do map tasks, some things get lost in the way. We can talk that in Slack later on. But I mean, like, but it's still quite a good solution. Maybe the observability breaks a bit, but for everything else, we really like it. So now maybe challenges also, right? Because it's a new tool, right? But it already has a few years. Maybe I see some faces here that probably can tell you for how long Flyte has been around. But it's a new kid in the block, right? I think it's worth mentioning what are the challenges. I think Nandagomar mentioned a few on what it takes to deploy, right? And maybe some things we found, none of them have been, let's say, none of them stopped us from still adding value, but they're worth mentioning also for people joining. For example, with the Flyte binary charts and the Prometheus metrics, right? We are getting sometimes the binary getting out of memory killed. Okay, the main deployment. Based on an investigation, it looks like it's related to Prometheus because it looks like it accumulates, and then it gets killed. It doesn't happen that often, so we can live with it, okay? But it gives us a bit of downtime of that restart, right? Every time it gets killed out of memory. But we believe that, or it can be solved with looking into the Prometheus conversation we saw in Slack and GitHub happening at some point, or by moving to Flyte core, okay? Because that gives us more, even if there is out of memory, you don't have downtime, okay? Because a Flyte binary has this disadvantage. It's not a disadvantage, but maybe something that we stumbled upon, that weights and biases offers you this possibility to do sweeps, okay? Based on your past experiments, you can ask weight and biases to do the runs for you. And it's not easy to integrate, right, with Flyte. And that we saw as a limitation at some point. We already decided not to use sweeps, but that was a challenge. We wanted to use kubeRay, okay, for parallelization. It was also a technology we really wanted to give it a go with so many good benefits. I think at some point kubeRay with Flyte were working very well, but I think with kubeRay, for the ones who don't know, is the Kubernetes component of Apache Array, which is for parallelization. kubeRay has been receiving many updates recently. A lot of things have changed a lot, and Flyte community is still catching up with that. It's on our plate also at some point to see if we can have time to collaborate on this and support Flyte, okay, to catch up with this. But that means that but the version we are with Flyte and the version we want to use of kubeRay, we cannot make it work, okay? For propeller metrics to understand the success or failure of our different workflows tasks, right? From the Flyte binary deployment, okay? The Flyte core probably yes, but from the Flyte binary it's not, or at least we couldn't. By the way, all these things are things that probably it can be a big part us, right? Not knowing how to use the tool, okay? So, but the propeller metrics, for example, we couldn't find a way to expose them, okay, to make the observability using the Flyte binary deployment. And last but not least, and this is something we stumble a little bit, passing data from task to task, okay? I believe there is this limit on the amount of data you can pass right from task to task. I think it has to do with the design of how Flyte works, the serialization and the delays. But we have found many times, right, the finding that limit. I think you can change it a little, you can increase a bit more, but we found that blocker a few times with the amount of data you can transfer. That means it's not a lot of, it's just an extra hassle that you have to write some extra code to save this in a third-party storage, then read it again, like things like that. Like it's so nice that you have that functionality that you can pass around data, but it's sometimes annoying that you cannot use it for everything, right? Like it will be lovely. So conclusions. This is maybe now we with Nanda Kumar we go one-on-one, okay, telling you or take away, okay, from our experience with Flyte already. It's going to be a year very soon, okay. As an orchestrator, okay, I think Flyte is a good or not even a good, really good replacement for CI/CD based pipelines or even Kubernetes cron shops, right? I think it's a very solid solution to do orchestration. So that brought us a lot of benefits. Start using it. Like it gave us flexibility, reproducibility, etc., and scalability. Now maybe Nanda Kumar, you want to take next one?
Yeah. So like we talked about before, task reusability is probably one of our favorite functionalities because with the raw data that we use, we need to apply a bunch of transformations before we train a model, or even during inference. And to be able to use that whole transformation task for transformation at both ends is with resources configured and everything, it makes it so much more easier. So that's one of our favorite functionalities.
Maybe as the only maybe drawback we saw, right, is that if you have a simple infrastructure environment, right, where you deploy, it's very simple. Flyte offers you many options to deploy, right? But if you have to deploy in a bit more complex environment, you need DevOps support from your own, especially when deploying on premise, right? When you deploy on your side, you need somebody that can handle DevOps and allows you to do these things. It's not drag and drop, okay? Of course, it's a platform solution, right? It's an orchestrator, but still, this maybe as important to highlight, right? If you are in a vanilla environment where you have created a Kubernetes cluster just for this, or it's a simple Kubernetes cluster, no problem. But if you have, like our case, there is a complex infrastructure that there is internal tooling on top of it and different processes, then the data science or machine learning or data team needs to work very closely with DevOps, which is expected, right, for a company of that size. But it's important to mention that it's not just I build a Docker and I have Flyte running, right, ready. So that's for me important to mention. And last one, Nanda Kumar, wanna take?
Yeah. So the last one is we saw that we got a really good ROI with deploying Flyte. It took us less than 2 quarters to deploy Flyte, get it polished, get it stable, and migrate all of our pipelines to Flyte, which is amazing because that's what we wanted. We wanted like quick turnaround, right? And like now we are, everybody on our team is thinking in terms of tasks and workflows and how we can achieve things, how we can build new things. So it's really good. So yeah.
Good. So that's all for today. I hope we kept it short and sweet with time. I don't know how we are.
Yeah, you're great on time.
Awesome. Good. I see Ketan here. Nice to see you, Ketan. Nice to meet you in person. Well, in virtual person.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys too, Mariano and Nanda Kumar. I've seen you guys around in the Slack. Fantastic to see you.
Yeah. So for everyone else, maybe if you have questions for me or Nanda Kumar, things you would like to know, to hear, war stories, whatever. Yes, anything. I see some familiar faces in the call. Hi to everyone that I know of. So yes, mostly.
Hey guys, thanks for such an awesome presentation. I was curious, how did the rollout go internally? Sorry, I'm John. I'm on the product side at Union. Like, once you got this stood up, it would be great if we could hear a little bit about how you ended up rolling it out to like maybe some early users and how kind of the rest of the team ended up, how that ended up going.
I can go if you like, Nandakumar.
Sure, sure.
Yes, we moved at a fast pace, we could say here at Cender, okay? So that means that at that time we spent the first quarter, one of the teams dedicated some of their time to put it into production ready state, the deployment, okay? And then it was a matter of having it as a goal for the teams, right, to onboard their pipelines into Flyte. Maybe it's important to say that there was no orchestrator in place, right? We were using GitLab schedules. That meant that it was not there were trade-offs. Most of the things were benefits, but there were pushbacks nonetheless. Okay, I can see some of the people from the company are here, or former members of the company, so they can tell you. So it was a bit painful, of course, because it's sometimes migrating a pipeline doesn't give you any business value. Okay, immediately. There was a bit of the learning curve as well, like I mentioned, deleting. So people asking, how do we delete the workflows, and no, you archive them, and maybe getting a bit lost in the UI at the beginning, or figuring out, not finding, well, that was one of, if you go in the slides, what is it? This one. It took the last one here, right? It was super important, the pod labeling and the task pod annotation, because otherwise we couldn't get the logs into Datadog, and we couldn't debug our applications. Okay, so on that front, it took a while in terms of getting that was the part that we had to spend the most after the fact, like improving monitoring and logging and observability in general to make sure people could make good use of the tool. I don't know if I answered your question.
Quickly to add as well. So I think we were smart, not to brag, but a little bit smart, but also lucky at the same time. So the way we did it was, like Mariano said, one team worked on deploying Flyte, right, and getting it polished. And then the same team, we said, okay, this is going to be the first team to move to Flyte, right? So because we have, we've deployed it, we played with Flyte, so we know. And it just so happened that the other team was building like a system from scratch, right? So they didn't have this problem of having to port everything. So they built almost most of their product or most of their system from scratch with Flyte. So that's why I say, we were both a little bit smart and also lucky at the same time. So yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Hey, I had a quick question on this, Nandakumar and Mariano. I think both of you did a fantastic job with the presentation. One question that I have is essentially, you currently have a few use cases onboarded, but I think overall, the type of use cases would also, like type of models and so on, would also help some of our listeners to actually understand what have you achieved. Many times people need to think about deep learning or models like that, but I worked with a lot of companies doing OR style models and scikit-learn like models and all those types of models. So please, any light on that would be really helpful.
Sure. So,
and what's your future plans, rather, both of them?
Nice. So can go first, Nandakumar,
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
So in both cases, we different implementations, but we use gradient boosting trees. Okay, in both cases, and the approach is classic in terms of tabular data for pricing and interaction based for recommendation system. Okay, so in that sense, it's a brick and mortar of data science and machine learning, right? And Flyte works really well. Okay, like it's so far. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nanda Kumar. We still haven't used GPU instances, correct?
Yeah, not yet.
It is in
Yeah.
our plans, but we still haven't used it. Okay, so for now, for us it's mostly CPU-based models. We wanted to jump into that with Ray. We have now we have to regroup and think, okay, how to do it. If to keep trying Ray or find another way, right? So most of our effort goes a lot into data cleaning, data preparation, model evaluation, experiment tracking, business rules as well. Okay, so when doing the model evaluation, our business is quite it's quite structured on one side because it's logistics. You have origin, destination, in comparison to Wallapop, for example. Wallapop, I know it's very unstructured data. Most of the information is in this description, right? In our case, data is very structured. We have origin, destination, times, type of cargo, like everything is in a column, right? And we have historical data, everything is tracked, right? Where the track went to where it went. So that means that for us, it's very common to work with structured data. But also that means that we have to process a lot of data and a lot of logic on top of that data. So Flyte helps us a lot in that aspect. For example,
And quickly to add, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, last thing,
finish.
maybe connecting to Snowflake. Okay, for us, it's a data warehouse operating on top of Snowflake and running queries there.
Yeah, so one more use case comes to mind. If I remember correctly, a couple of months ago, we also have a data platform team, and they were also looking for an orchestrator. And they were also seriously considering Flyte. So we gave them, access to our instances, and they ran some, test jobs and things like that. So non-ML, but still pretty. Heavy on the data side.
And are they now using Flyte instead, or?
I'm not sure. I need to check because
No,
completely lost. Like,
no,
yeah.
I know. They decided. I think one of your colleagues, Daxter, they went for Daxter. They use DBT. I don't know why. I don't know the decision behind it, but yes, they went for Daxter.
There was two other questions in the chat if we have time for them. Somebody asked, are you using the SageMaker endpoint? And if so, are you using the SageMaker SDK?
I think that question was for Wallapop. Because we are not using SageMaker, and I think the question went to Martí Roca, right?
I think Marty asked that question.
Okay. My bad. We are not using SageMaker internally. So no, internally for model serving, we use BentoML. And no, we did not integrate directly, okay, with Flyte because we never thought about it, but usually it's much easier to load the model and run the inference than in a batch way call an endpoint. Okay, it's very costly. It's that pattern. It's not that good. You have to have really good reasons to call batch a REST endpoint. Okay, it's not so good. Okay, can be costly. We could do that with BentoML, but no, we are not calling our BentoML endpoints directly from Flyte. Yes, I don't know if I answered the question from Martí.
And then the other question was, have you put any thought into upstreaming the weights and biases contribution?
It was a really simple function. Okay, it was a decorator. We could publish out maybe in Slack as a snippet. Okay, it was mostly a decorator of a task that it was very, let's say, it was very tailored to our use cases and how we defined experiments. And so I don't know how much they generalize. We didn't take the effort to make a general enough solution for any possible use case, right? We can post later if you want how we treat this. Something maybe worth, if anybody here is working with some biases and Flyte, is to take the effort to link. Weights and biases doesn't allow you to track things in parallel, okay? Like the runs, the single unit that you track in weights and biases cannot be run in parallel at the same time. You can start, stop, resume, but in parallel doesn't work. That collides with Flyte because in essence, you want to run things in parallel. So then every run, every execution needs to be tracked with a different ID. Something really useful is that Flyte gives you the execution ID of the workflow, of the parent workflow. So you can use the execution ID to link all the runs belonging to a single workflow when you want to build reporting, okay? So you know, this model came from this execution, and you can find all the things that connect it, okay? Yeah, just to mention.
Awesome. Thank you for answering all the questions. And I know you're in the Slack, so I'm sure if other people have more questions later, they can post them there. And then with that, I think it's time to move on to our other demo, David.
Yeah, it is. So real quick, we are introducing a new AI-powered assistant that will be available on the Flyte documentation website, Slack, and GitHub issues. I hope to, I mean, it won't replace community support, but probably a way to have a first touch if no one in the community is available to answer quickly question you may have. This is possible thanks to the Run LLM team. And so they are here. Welcome, Shengang and Vikram. So thank you for joining. And again, thank you to the Sennder team for taking the time and being here. It's awesome to have you.
Yeah, it's absolutely our pleasure. Thanks, David, for giving us an opportunity to talk about RunLM briefly. So maybe a little bit about myself. My name is Chenggang Wu. I'm co-founder and CTO of RunLM. So I did my PhD at Berkeley, working mainly on the scalable cloud infrastructure side of things. We found the company with another PhD, Vikram, and our advisors. In fact, one of them, Joey Gonzalez, is leading this LMSys project that powers the chatbot arena leaderboard. If you guys are familiar with it, they also invented the Vicuna model. So we've done a bunch of research both on the LLM inference and the LLM infrastructure side, and we're applying these new technologies to our product at Run LLM. So I'll be quick. So I'm gonna give you a brief overview of what Run LLM is and why do we need it, and show you some examples, right, of how it's been deployed in the Flyte community. And as well as I'm gonna demo you a pretty cool new feature that we're releasing to the Flyte community, hopefully later this week in a couple days. So I did have some slides, but maybe I'll just show one of them later on, but I'll just talk it through. So one thing I'm super proud of about our product, right? It's super easy to understand. To end user is a chatbot, right? So you ask a question, we generate an answer. But the cool thing about it is that it's not a generic chatbot, right? It's a chatbot that's trained on a specific tool, in this case, Flyte. And you can ask, any questions related to Flyte's, conceptual questions, coding or API questions, and even debugging questions. And the main motivation is basically learning a new technical product, right? It's not that easy. And oftentimes, you have some use cases in mind and you want to figure out whether Flyte is a good fit or not. And without the assistant, you need to manually search through the docs and find the relevant piece of information and think carefully about whether or not it accomplish your goal or not. It's a time-consuming, laborious process that involves a lot of guess and check works. So maybe I'll share a couple of my slide. Give me a moment. Share a portion of the screen. You guys can see this flywheel, right? So to solve this problem of insufficient context, right, we use the customized AI assistant to fill in the gap. Basically, the assistant learns exclusively from Flyte's API and documentation. We generate answers tailored to documentation and code base, and because of that, right, the answers are now grounded in truth and minimizes hallucination. And as with all the learning process, right, it's an iterative step, and we use the feedback gained from the community member to continuously improve the assistant. So this forms like a virtuous cycle flywheel effect. At a high level, this is how it works under the hood. The first step, obviously, is to ingest whatever knowledge that we can gain from the Flyte community. So in this case, we have ingested, obviously the website documentation, the blog post, GitHub issues and PRs, I believe, and also the Slack archives. So these are the data sources that we have so far. And importantly, with all the data sources, we do two things in parallel. The first thing we do is instead of relying on a generic LLM like GPT-4, we actually fine-tune an LLM specifically for Flyte. And this is very useful because Flytes or any other technical tools, they have their own or exclusive specific terminologies in their documentations, right? And when the user asks a question, the question itself may not be in those terminologies. So when we do vector search, naive vector search, the efficiency is not going to be great, right? So we actually use the fine-tuned LLM to hypothetically translate the question that the user is going to ask to the terminology that's in the Flyte documentation to better align with the search process to make the search process much more efficient. And in parallel, we'll also use some cutting edge retrieval techniques and re-ranking algorithms to retrieve the best, most relevant docs possible. So in combination with RAG, the fine-tuned model, and GPT-4, we generate the final response back to the end user. Right? And this response is surfaced via various distribution mechanisms, including let me show you some of the services that we deployed our bots so far. 1 second. So if you go to the Flyte doc site, there's this Ask AI chat widget that we can just click in and ask whatever questions. And the GitHub issues bot that David alluded to, whenever you open up an issue, if the bot thinks that it can answer the question, it will respond with, in this case, it's saying the user's asking some questions, but there turns out to be there is already a relevant GitHub issue posted before. So we identified that. If the assistant, in this case, if the assistant is not confident about the answer, it just won't post anything. That's that. So on the chat widget, you ask a question, we stream in the response with some code snippet and with the citations to the source documentation. So we're almost out of time, so I'll just show you one new feature that we're rolling out, hopefully in the next couple of days. So if I ask, how does Flyte Propeller Core and gRPC plugin interact? Let's give our assistant a few more seconds. GPT-4 is getting a little slower these days, but let's see. Yeah, okay, now here we go. So it streams the response, but actually, wait a second. I think our image generation. Let me try again. There's some weirdness going on, and this is still as you can see, it's a local host environment, so there might be some glitches, but let me try again. If thing doesn't work, I have some pre-prepared historical conversation that I can show, but let's give one more try. Let's see how it goes this time. Okay, here we go. So basically, in addition to giving out a text response, we also dynamically detect if there's any images in the original Flyte doc that's relevant. And once we identify the relevance, we also attach the image back together with the text response. So our assistance is basically multimodal in this sense, right? So now the output can contain both text and images, and we're all working on other features. For example, being able to parse out if the user has some attachment. For example, in Slack questions, we can also dynamically parse that text instead of currently we're ignoring the text in the attachment, but soon we'll be able to handle multimodal both in the input and the output. As you can see, this image output is not completely, it's not super consistent. In the first trial, it sort of failed to fetch the image, and we're working on, in the next couple of days, we're gonna work on making this image output feature more consistent. So hopefully we're gonna roll it out to the community this week. Okay, I think that's it for the demo. Happy to take any questions.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. How fast the RunLLM team incorporates feedback is really amazing. We're really thankful. And again, the bot could still give wrong answers or hallucinate. So we'll try to give it human feedback as much as possible to make it better.
Yep.
And yeah, thank you again to the RunLLM team. There's a shameless plug from Niels.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Will be fun. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Cool.
Great. Any comment, question?
I'm excited.
A quick one. Yep. Quick one. Did you fine tune RunLLM on Flyte, or what did you use?
Yeah, when we generate the answer, we use a combination of fine-tuned GPT 3.5 that's tuned towards Flyte and GPT-4. So it's two models combined to generate the final response.
Nice.
And as these new LLMs got released these days, for example, Llama 3, which is supposed to be better than GPT 3.5 and faster, we're also considering these latest innovations. The good thing about it is every piece in the prediction pipeline is swappable, right? So as the new technology, new types of LLM comes out, our team has been constantly evaluating these new offerings and comparing the performance to see how this new potential LLM fits in with regard to trade-offs between latency, quality, and cost.
Hi, Sennder.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Ching.
Hey.
Yeah, hi, Sennder. Nice to finally meet you.
Yeah.
And thank you for the presentation. Pretty cool stuff, and responsiveness as we iterated over the quality and so on. One question I think is what the person was asking about, is the pipeline itself a Flyte pipeline that you showed, or is
Not
that
yet.
what technology is that running on?
Right. So we built everything pretty much from scratch in the sense that it's running on a GKE cluster, and at a high level, it's we have a combination of batch pipeline, right? Batch processing, like the data ingestion process is a batch processing pipeline, and whenever we send a chat and get a response, it's a real time endpoint that it hits. But right now, the architecture that we can use is mostly built by hand. We aren't relying on any libraries to do that, but definitely happy to explore possibilities with Flyte for sure. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think there's one outstanding question from Marty. Real quick, do you use any tool to validate prompts like MLflow, Discard?
When you say validate prompt, are you talking about how do we evaluate different versions of the prompts we use internally, or something else? Okay. So right now it's mostly, human validation. We know there are tools that can potentially automate this process, like DSPy, if you guys have heard of it. But I think at this stage, because we clearly already broken our inference pipeline into stages, the evaluation process is not like it already gave us some confidence about how to evaluate each process by human. And the tricky thing about an automated prompt evaluation and iteration tool like DSPy is that it's an optimization problem. So you need to define some kind of a goals to optimize over. And right now it's a little bit difficult for us, or in this space, to quantify what that goal is. So it's not been our highest priority so far. But I think in the future, as the product further matures, we'll definitely have more cycles to invest in this type of systematic optimization. Maybe the last thing I'll mention is that together with this image output feature, the other feature that we're rolling out that's more beneficial to the Flyte maintainers is this question clustering, topic clustering. So, we grouped all the questions asked by the community members in the past 30 days, and we figure out the type of questions asked, right? Cluster into 10 clusters with topics, and you can click into each topic and see the detailed questions. And hopefully that will guide both of us, right? Are there any missing areas in documentation, or maybe community members are asking about certain directions that will hopefully give us some insights about the product roadmap. So excited about that feature as well.
That's amazing. Thank you again.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I think we are at the end of the agenda and way over time. So any other question, comment? No. Okay, so with that, thank you all for joining again. And well, we hope to see you in the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for having.